Today, we're going to talk about creating personal meaning in the holidays. I'm Deborah Henson-Conant. I'm here with Kathleen Wiley. I'm a composer and a performer. Kathleen is a Jungian psychoanalyst. We both play the harp, and so we call this Jung at Harp. And we're here to have a conversation. We're not here to tell you how to do things or give you advice. It's all about the art of conversation, taking an idea, looking at an idea, and then seeing what we each bring to it. And in particular, we're interested in bringing our ideas from the world of music and my ideas of the strings of passion and creative resonance, and all of Kathleen's experience and ideas from her years as a Jungian psychoanalyst. So today, we wanted to talk about creating personal meaning in the holidays. And I requested this subject because I have long had difficulties with certain holiday tunes, certain holiday pieces. And last year I took one of those, which was Silent Night, a piece that I've always struggled with to find my own way with. And I did a project called 15 Days of Silent Night, where I played it differently every day. And when instead of playing it in a traditional way, I took it apart and I found my own personal meaning in the tune. So Kathleen, before I start talking too much about this or even playing the song, I know that you have a lot to say, and we were thinking about this tune Silent Night because it's great to look through one lens, and you had some very interesting things to say about it. I was saying that I kind of struggle with the literalness of the words and where I heard it and all of that.
Yeah, one of the things that is a hallmark of Jungian psychoanalysis is looking at stories symbolically. And what that means is that Jung very much saw within religious stories, within mythology, within fairy tales, within collective folklore, that the stories that get handed down from generation to generation, metaphor for processes that go on in our psyche as we become more whole. As to use the language of Christmas, we give birth to parts of ourselves that really are aspects of our own divine nature, but that there hadn't been room for previously. So from a Jungian point of view, we would look at all of these words and images in this song as well as others symbolically, meaning what are they telling us that's not literal or historical? And if people have that belief, that's okay too. That's over there. But to look at it symbolically as what does this represent that happens in us as we are giving birth to a creative project, to a new habit, to a new relationship, to a new way of moving in the world? And one of the things that's key in that is, as Jung would say, and he wrote this in his foreword to The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is an alchemical text, he said that what is most important is that we follow the implacable law of one's own being. The implacable law of one's own being, that we follow our own inner guidance, walk to the beat of our own drummer. And what you did last year is you took this song and you followed the implacable law of your own being to find what your own inner drummer resonated with, or harpist. I'm using drum again metaphorically.
There's
what
so many
spoke
things
to your heart.
Right. Okay. Right. Which wasn't always easy. It wasn't like, oh, I'm hearing that drummer and I'm going to follow it. It was having to discover that. By taking it apart. I want to go back to two things that you said. You talked about giving birth, to the creative, all the creative inside of us over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure whether that was specific to this time of year or this, holiday, or whether that's just all the time. Is that is our way of being?
Yeah, that goes on all the time. Part of, for me, the way that I see this time of year and all of the celebrations is it gives us an opportunity to consciously honor this process, to consciously recognize that if we follow again the Christmas story metaphorically, again symbolically, that sometimes when we're giving birth to a new way of being, something in us is changing. It's not convenient. It doesn't go along with the collective way of doing things. We might get inconvenienced in the process and our original plans get sidetracked. And we might sometimes end up in situations that aren't the most plush and luxurious. It's kind of like we have to get into the mess. You always talk about babies being born slimy,
Right.
to
Everything is
give
born
birth.
slimy.
Yeah. And so this is an opportunity to help us consciously remember that and connect with that. So no matter what time of year we're in, when something new starts to bubble up in us and grow in us, and it's time then to express it in the world in action, that we understand that if it's messy, if we're inconvenienced, if we're sidetracked, it's part of the process.
Okay, so there's so much that we said even before we got on, and that I'd like to look at, because part of what I love about this conversation is that we're looking at from it, from the the Jungian psychoanalytical view, and also from the musical view. So it's so I was thinking, at Christmas time, Hanukkah, this time of year, there are songs that are associated. This is just kind of bizarre to me growing up. There are songs that are associated with the time of year that do not get sung at other times of the year. Unless their meaning, like Greensleeves, for example, is also What Child Is This? But other than that, you just don't play them. And then as I became when I was playing background music as a harpist, there was a time of year at which I had to know and be able to play all of this music. And then it was completely useless for the rest of the year. So I want to look at this from a musical standpoint. I want to look at birthing new things for us from a musical standpoint, and how we do that. Because one of the things about nature is, once the seed and the sperm have joined, then there's, the process takes on its own. It takes the process takes over. The creative process does not have that kind of an agenda, unfortunately. We have to keep engaging with it and keep going back and keep. So, for example, when I was taking apart Silent Night for 15 Days of Silent Night, I had to keep going back to the genesis, keep going back to what the heart of the tune was, and the way the tune is usually played, the traditional way the tune is played, which is something like, that was like, stop for me. and I had to go, okay, take it apart. What's really here? Take the accompaniment apart, because the accompaniment is often what locks it into style. So there's style and there's idea. And you've already been talking about how to go back to the idea, right? When you're talking about the deep meaning. So the style is hello, I'm a lullaby, and precious, and whatever it is. And then and go to the one thing, which is the melody. And what if we don't even take more than that? We could just take that part. We could play with that. So to find my new way with the piece means sometimes to not even play the whole song, but to find a part of it, and then to take it apart, reharmonize it, create a new style that isn't associated with other things in my life, new harmonies that aren't maybe happy, that are maybe just treating it as a motif, adding rhythm. but always coming back. And so on and so forth, just playing with it. And one of the things that I love about that is, first of all, I have a lot of trouble remembering melodies, remembering how they go and how high does it jump up and stuff like that. And so by taking a little tiny part of it, being able to discover and look into it. Now, I'm just curious if that approach, from a musical standpoint or a creative standpoint, a way to make personal meaning, to create personal meaning with anything in the holiday. Can you talk about, like, in music, I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to take the bass away. I'm going to take the accompaniment away. I'm going to go to the melody, because the melody is the thing that retains through time. I might even take just a tiny bit of it, and then I'm going to let it grow in a different way. Now, how is that? What are you thinking as you hear that?
Yeah, what I'm thinking about is the alchemical process called distillation, where things are distilled to their purest essence. And Jung, as well as others, saw alchemy and its symbolism as a metaphor for, again, psychological processes that we go through to live more fully. So if you for with Silent Night, or for those of us as we're going into the holiday season this in this next week or two, if we can really check in with ourselves and look at all of our expectations, all of our desires, all of our memories, positive and negative, and really write them all down in a journal, or express them on your harp or your instrument, or draw a picture of them, or dance them in your living room, and then begin to feel into what has the most energy for me. And all of this right now, what is it I'm most drawn to? What is it that really kind of captures my heart? And then play with that and let that be the center that grows something, which I'm guessing is a little bit of what you did those 15 days of Silent Night. Every day you checked in with, where's the energy at today? What kind of captures your heart that you then want to play with and expand? If we can do that around holiday traditions, around events we're going to, around our sense of shoulds, around what we really want but we're terrified to actually make space for.
Well, it's funny, Kathleen, as you're talking about I'm thinking, it's funny because sometimes I will choose to go towards the thing I am most resistant to. So I literally chose this tune because I had so much discomfort and negative feelings about it, and 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 now that I'm thinking about all the things in the holidays, I'm thinking that that's what I've done it with so many things. So, for example, I have a class called How to Make a Holiday Card, or video greeting cards. And one of the reasons is because the whole thing of the holiday greeting card, and you have to go out and you have to get a good one, and then this and the story and the blah, 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 all this stuff, the tradition around it, which I enjoy when I get it from other people, but I feel it as an obligation that I am just not comfortable fulfilling in the normal way. But if I can going back to this idea of distilling, and I want to talk about that in a second. Distilling, what is it? It is a personal greeting of love. How can I do that in a way that where I feel that I'm growing, I'm sharing, I'm being vulnerable, I'm being authentic? And that's where I came up with the video, doing it as a video greeting card, which is just very simple. It's not about showing your talent. It's literally about, hitting the button saying, Kathleen, I'm thinking about you. I wish I could be with you on the holidays. And I just want to share, something joyful to tell you how happy I hope your holidays will be. So it does, and it can be even less than that. It's just reaching out. So let's go back to this idea of distillation.
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not sure that everybody knows how to distill. And I find that it's often helpful to use words. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, I'll be like, oh, I have to get, okay, greeting card. Okay, what is it? What is a greeting card? It's a greeting. It's something I can send. It doesn't necessarily have to be in physical form. What is
Mm-hmm.
the why? Why am I sending it? What is the point? It is to send my love. It is to let somebody know that I care about them. Okay, is there a way that I can really use who I am to do that in a way that doesn't feel like I'm just fulfilling some prescribed thing, but it's, well, for me, that it's got a deep creative element.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, what you're talking about is, and I want to say what you did last year is you distilled your resistance to Silent Night
Right.
by,
That's right.
for 15 days, going into and building a relationship to the tune to see what was there for you,
Right.
what might come for you in relationship to it. So resistance is a whole lot of energy. Whatever we're resistant to, it means there's a lot of psychic energy around it. And you chose to work with it, to go into it, to distill it, to get the essence, to find yourself in it. And your creative expression was a way that you found yourself. In terms of the questions to ask yourself, as you were talking, it reminded me of Jung's theory of psychological functions, that we, thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation. And so that thinking is like, okay, what is this? So, okay, what is this? This is a greeting card. Feeling is, what value does it have? Okay, it's a way for me to express my love and connect with people. Sensation, what does it look like? What are the
Oh.
possibilities? Okay, it can be a video card, it can be musical. And then intuition, what is it that really would want to express? What comes up for me in terms of creativity? So in a way, we can use those for psychological functions, or asking those questions, to help us connect with the essence that's there, which is really the energy that transcends all of that.
Yeah,
It,
and as you're
yeah.
talking about this, I realize we're kind of coming back to a similar subject, or my brain is, which is, as we disconnect from how good do I look? Am I a good performer? Am I doing this right? Did I send the right card? And as we get to, what do I really want to say to this person? And then we get into the territory. Am I going to look stupid? Is this going to be, are they going to ignore me? Are they going to hate this? Oh, and then we're off in this disconnect from
Yeah.
human connection.
Yeah. Well, we get lost in our ego desires. Instead of really staying connected to our larger self and being authentic, we start looking out here to what other people think of us, and our image and our ideal. And the minute we start being worried about our image and the ego ideal of how we want to look, we start to lose the strong connection to who we really are.
As you're saying that, I'm realizing, so I've been doing these video greeting card trainings. And when I train, we literally go through the press the button, say hello, move to your harp, come back and say hello and press the button. We go through those motions over and
Mm-hmm.
over again. And I realized that one of the things that allows us to be able to communicate authentically is having a format. It comes back to, we come back to this over and over again. Structure is the foundation of creative freedom. And it's interesting because it doesn't matter whether you deconstruct, and this comes back to the principles of the strings of passion, because
Mm-hmm.
structure is the second string of passion, but deconstruction is the sixth. You deconstruct it in order to be able to lift off. And so I'm thinking that such a beautiful principle of this time of year into being able to create personal meaning is that deconstruction. And you're talking about how we can use those 4 principles to deconstruct the tradition and let it, when I first went to Scotland, one of the things that just blew me away was how deep the Scottish musicians were into tradition, and yet how that
Mm-hmm.
tradition was living. They weren't maintaining the tradition, they were living the tradition, and it was expanding and growing through them. And so I'm thinking this is what is one beautiful thing about tradition, is that we can take what is there and then we can engage with it in our own way. So for example, with Silent Night, to deconstruct it to just to that, which is something I can play with, or to apply a different style. I mean, applying a different style is, I wouldn't say that's cheap thrills. I mean, so if I just went, I'm applying a jazz style to that tune, which is fun and it's a great do. But when I take that and see what it means, I can play with it endlessly. I can play with it. So that deconstruction, so I want to ask about this distillation. And one of the reasons I want to ask about that is, so one of my big projects was called Invention and Alchemy. And what it meant was the invention of the individual, and then what happens when we're in collaboration with others is this magical thing that happens. But someone called me up on the phone and they were like, because if this is about alchemy and the dark arts, I don't want to go to it. And I was like, I don't know. I don't even know anything about that. What do you know about that? And is that even relevant? Or is that just like a folk? Where does that fit with alchemy, if at all?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I just keep hearing you say the word.
Yeah, Jung says that, every archetype has both a light side and a dark side, a creative side and a destructive side. Everything can be used in service of life or against life. Alchemy was, the folklore is it was a science attempting to turn base metals into gold. Jung and other philosophers saw that it really is a metaphor for how we work with all of what goes on inside of us to bring it into consciousness and find the gold of unity, the unification of the self, so that we're not split to where, we make nice to someone and then we turn around and gossip about them and do things that would sabotage them. That's not a unity of personality. That's a dark side. Alchemy is symbolic.
So it's a disconnect. So we can either use it to connect with it. Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And everything can be used against ourselves and against other people. So is alchemy a dark art? No. Has it been used in a dark way? Yes. All we have to do is turn on the TV and see advertisements. Media is an attempt to, advertising is an attempt to manipulate people to get them to do what you want them to do using psychological principles, usually to ignite fear. If you want to be sexy, you use this toothpaste. You drive this car, i.e., if you don't, you're not sexy, nobody will want you. That's black arts, black magic, dark alchemy.
Interesting.
So anything can be used.
So in that, no, that's great. So it sounds like you're saying that the alchemy is going into the psychological to understand it. Is that right? And that's why.
Well, the alchemy is a system of thought or a system of images and symbolism that conveys these processes. And those processes can consciously be used in service of life or against life.
Okay. All right. Well, we might have to have a whole thing on that because it sounds like it's like a big thing. So let's go back to the distillation. Let's go back to the distillation process, because for me, that is always, let's go back to the word that kind of opened up my brain, which was the word noumenon, which I just stumbled on in a game of dictionary. And what I loved about it is the meaning was a thing in itself as separate from its physical existence. So to me, that's a distillation. So what is, I'm not going to get to the noumenon of what the song Silent Night is, but I can get closer and closer to what it is if I take it apart, if I distill it.
Right. And you know, if we understand the history of Silent Night, it can also help, because the history of Silent Night is it was written in 1818 by an Austrian priest who and an Austrian priest who on Christmas Eve was surveying the peacefulness of the village in Austria, and this was 3 years after the Napoleonic Wars had been raged and happening, and Austria was involved in that. So if you think about that, he was touched at the contrast between this peaceful scene that night and what he had experienced in war-ravaged times in Europe, then the words begin to make a lot more sense. The other thing that the lore says is that the church organ that night was broken for Christmas Eve Mass. So he wrote this poem, and then he took it to the musician who then composed chords, and they sang it without the church organ. So I think if we understand that this was for him the imagery that came up and the felt sense in response to the contrast between a war-ravaged village and this peaceful, quiet, silent, anticipatory of good life village.
I see that. And I'm listening to the words in my head. So sleep in heavenly peace. Is that the last word? Sleep in heavenly peace.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that after war, the idea to be able to sleep in a heavenly peace, just of quiet, would be wow. So
yeah, I mean, the symbolism of that begins then, the essence, the Neumann, the Neumann of that begins, then we feel it.
What's this round virgin, mother and child part, though?
Well, now we're going to get into the historical or literal interpretation versus symbolic.
Okay.
Something that is virgin is in its pure state. So you can have like an essential oil, for instance. I use lots of essential oils.
Oh, right. I do have virgin olive oil.
You have virgin olive oil, meaning there's nothing else in it. It's pure olive oil. That's all it is. That's what virgin means. It's the thing unto itself. As you're talking about the Neumann, the essence. So again, we have to look at that word in its original meaning without all of the historical religious connotations to really appreciate that. If we get down to that, what Joseph Moore, who wrote the poem, and then Franz Gruber put the tune to the words, that perhaps that the virgin state they were wanting to express was the beauty of life coming out of this peaceful, dreamy, almost unearthly, sleepy state, again, when we experience it in contrast to war.
Yeah, and there's the other story you were talking about that song, about the two, the famous story of the two, which I can never hear without. It's just so.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, in 1914.
Describe it. I am not describing it well.
In 1914, during World War II, World War I, on Christmas Eve, the Germans and the Americans called a truce. And it said that after a while, you could hear rising up from both sides of the battlefield, Silent Night being sung. The Germans knew it, the Americans knew it. And there was this moment of unity, a moment of unity expressed through song. And if we remember, perhaps that is the most important essence, the Neumann around music, is it unites people. It's somehow that there is that we find a common, that again, on that, I'm imagining those soldiers in that moment on the battlefield were having the same appreciation of the magic and miraculousness of peace that the Austrian priest was having in 1818. And so when we can get beyond literalness and really connect to the essence, which is different than the literal form.
Right. Right. And what I'm hearing in this discussion is the silence, the beauty of the silence um, after or between battle, the battles that we
Yeah,
all have, to be able to find that tiny moment. And those battles are sometimes outside of us, and sometimes those battles are inside of us.
that's
Um,
right.
I mean, even as we're giving gifts, as we're worrying about whether those gifts are going to be appreciated or not appreciated, finding that stillness, that beautiful stillness in the midst in which we actually can connect to what we want to give, not what we want to be seen as having given, but what we
Yes.
literally want to let that person know really is the gift. The gift is truly to acknowledge people. And maybe that's the distillation that I'm realizing about the entire holiday, and the gift is to acknowledge the value of the people in our lives. And how can we do that in the most authentic and creative way to us? I mean, this is to create personal meaning in the holidays, is to take it back, to take it back to its deepest.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to the distillation that we often end with and get to at the end of our conversations, which you have at the bottom of every one of your emails you send out for Hip Harp Academy. It's about connection, not perfection.
Right.
And that what matters in the greeting card, what matters in the song, what matters in the gift, what matters in the family meals you may do, or the social things, or the friends you get together with, isn't all of those external things, but it's the connection, the felt sense of the moment, of the union of two people meeting, where we do feel seen and valued and accepted and validated. And none of that has to do with literalism or historical. It just has to do with the moment of being.
Well, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that the whole, creating personal meaning in the holidays can have to do with every single thing that we do, the gifts we give, and the gifts we receive, how we receive them, how we acknowledge them, how we take it, the letter, and think, wow, this person loves me. I'm still on their list. Yay. And,
Yeah.
and, and to let them know that, and to actually, that's the beauty. It's that someone's opening a connection, not about not about the gift itself. And I think this is why I'm looking at all the trappings, the way we wrap, the way we send, that we can send
Mhm.
our love and appreciation and our authentic selves in those things, in the way that we give the gift of who we are,
Right.
basically. That's how we start owning it. And when we own it, then we can truly give it to others.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't know, if we aren't connected with ourselves, it's
Right.
going to be hard to have an authentic connection with someone else.
Right. And I'm thinking that I don't always have that connection with myself. And I'm thinking that the holidays are an opportunity for me to make that connection with myself through all my resistance, and where I'm
Yeah.
seeing, through where I see that I'm not connected, that actually helps me see. And anything I feel like, "Oh, I have to do that," that's an opportunity for creativity and for making meaning, making it mean something.
Yeah, I'm thinking about one of my analyses after Thanksgiving said, being with your family at the holidays is like going to psychic boot camp. It's like, it's all of a sudden, everything you've been learning about yourself and how to stay connected and stay out of old patterns and not respond in ways you don't want to anymore. It's like all of a sudden you get to really work those muscles. But you're saying something that I really want to echo, and that's in our title, which is meaning, creating personal meaning. And Jung says that when we encounter things coming up from our unconscious psyche or from the unconscious in the outer world, unconscious meaning what's unknown, what has a life of its own that operates independent of the ego and our idea we're in control, that when we encounter the unconscious, we can respond with creative formulations and with understanding and making meaning. And that those two things actually are on a continuum and travel together. So that every meaning we assign to something, every understanding we come to is a creative formulation. And every creative formulation, expression of music, art, the words we choose, the gifts we select, also have meaning. So what is important in terms of individuation, which means living the fullness of who I am, following the implacable law of my being, or you're following the implacable law of your being, is that we really pay attention consciously to the understanding and meaning that we assign things, and that we realize that there are endless creative formulations that can lead to different meanings and understandings. Just like today, our sharing about Silent Night has led to some new meaning and understanding, partly because you shared your creative formulations of the song. That those two things go together, and that where we get stuck and authentic is when, instead of going with our own creative formulation that has meaning for us, we do what we should do. We do what we ought to do. We do what so-and-so says we should do.
I see. And that's why it's inauthentic, and that's why it feels uncomfortable. And the space between that and finding our way is basically what I'm going to be talking about starting in January with Strings of Passion. It's how to take it apart. What is the impulse? What is the structure you're using? How can you take it apart? Because it isn't always going to be easy to be like, wait, I'm going to do this my way. My way is not clear to me until I've spent a lot of time being messy, having it look worse. If there's people who come in and they're like, that doesn't look like a holiday card or whatever. And so we also have to protect ourselves, meaning we have to protect the creative part of ourselves. So as we wrap up, I'm thinking, what do I take away from this? And what do I want to give to others to take away? I want to take that I really can have a personal meaning in the holidays. And I may share that. There may be others who share that with me already, and I can connect with them. Or there may be ways that that others may not even notice, but it's how I do the bow, how I make the card. And then it also may be, there was one other thing I was going to say. And it is in how I give appreciation. Like that is the one that is just so can be overlooked, and yet it's just such a wonderful point of connection.
Yeah. I mean, and part of what I'm hearing you say is you're realizing that the meaning is inherent in both what you give and what you receive and how you receive.
Right.
And
that's right. And you can make whatever meaning you want of it.
Right.
And especially in the receiving, you can it just reminds me of this joke my dad used to tell. He was a psychologist, and he was like, there's a pessimist kid and an optimist kid. They take the pessimist kid and they put him in a room full of toys. They take an optimist kid and put him in a room full of horse poo. And they come back an hour later, and the pessimist kid is sitting there morosely and just saying, all these toys, I already have them and they're all broken. And then they go back and they see the optimist kid is just running around this pile of horse poo, and I don't know how you say it the horse shit, and he's just running around and running around and running around. They were like, why are you doing that? And he was like, well, with all this horse shit, there's got to be a pony somewhere. And so I'm realizing that there's actually I love that. I love that joke for this season because that really is the heart of making personal meaning. Is what we appreciate of ourselves and also of what others or what we're given.
Yeah. And I want to say, I think part of what we have to do to create personal meaning is we have to give up all of these idealized meanings that the Hallmark Channel gives us, or the billboards give us, or, that we learned growing up. We have to give up these idealized expectations and pictures of what it's supposed to be,
Right.
to really connect with what is it for me, and how would this be meaningful for me? What can I do that is soulful for me, is how I often think about it.
Right.
It is, because the soulfulness for me is where I connect with both the meaning and the creative formulations or possibilities. And if we can give up the expectations and all of those ideals of what it should be, then we really can connect with what has heart for us, what really juices us. And again, sometimes the juice is in the resistance.
Well, that's beautiful, and that's a beautiful way to end this, Kathleen. I feel so much more excited about actually going into the holidays and creating my own, using it as an opportunity to create personal meaning in every tradition, that I have, in everything that I'm given, from, how I might make a card to, I just realized, I put a wreath on my front door, but that's an opportunity to be creative that I haven't even explored yet. So
That's right.
thank you, and thank you for everybody who's who's been here listening. And Reham said, "There's got to be a pony somewhere." This will be my mantra whenever I face some lots of good. Yes, there's got to be a pony somewhere. So, Kathleen, thank you again. It's always a delight to get a chance to talk about these things and to learn about them and to come up with just one subject and then to explore it, and to explore it not just alone, but to explore it with you and with everything that you bring to it. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. You are a beautiful gift to me this holiday. And thank you to everybody who comes and watches later on and sends us notes. And I just love that this is, I love your being a part of this conversation as well. All right. So have a happy holiday, and we will see you after
Yes.
the holidays. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.